Today is Good Friday. If Jesus came among us today, would we recognize him? Our culture would not, especially as Isaiah portrays him. Even as many were amazed at him, so marred was his look beyond human semblance. There was in him no stately being to make us look at him, nor appearance that would attract us to him. He was one of those from whom people hid their faces. He was spurned, and they held him in no esteem. Can you imagine Isaiah's Jesus on K Street, or Wall Street, or your street, or my street? Not really. But we mustn't back away in revulsion from this forlorn and lonely figure. On the contrary, it is his misery, his brokenness, and his woundedness that we must embrace. He was pierced for our offenses and crushed for our sins, cut off from the land of the living, smitten for the sins of his people. Theologies abound about our sins and the sins of the people, but these theologies tend to burden us with guilt, cripple us, blind us to the life-giving, love-sharing reality of the resurrection. Let's see if we can do better. Jesus must have read this passage many times as he grew into the realization that in describing the Messiah, Isaiah was describing him. Then, in St. John's account of the Passion story in today's Gospel, the soldiers flog Jesus, dress him in royal scarlet, and force a skin-splitting crown of thorns on his head. Pilate leads him outside where the bloodthirsty crowd bays for his death, and he seats Jesus on the judgment seat. This latter, seemingly insignificant detail, Pilate sitting Jesus where he, Pilate, pronounces judgments, draws together Isaiah's servant and the tortured Jesus to reveal the transcendent reality. The one who is judged unworthy is himself the real judge. Do you remember Mary and Joseph bringing the baby Jesus to the temple and meeting Simeon? St. Luke tells us that Simeon blessed them and said to his mother Mary, "This child is destined for the falling and the rising of many in Israel, and to be a sign that will be opposed, so that the inner thoughts of many will be revealed." Today, Simeon's judgment is fulfilled in our presence. When Pilate seats Jesus on the judgment seat, Jesus reveals himself as the sign that is opposed. He reveals the inner thoughts of the religious leaders and the crowd, thoughts of anger, jealousy, resentment that do so much damage, as we know in our political life. 40 years later, the Romans destroyed Jerusalem. Jewish leaders fled to the coast where they reinvented Judaism, and the fledgling Christian community arose as a Gentile church. The rising and the falling of many in Israel, indeed. Having been brought low, like the servant Isaiah describes, Jesus proceeds from that low place to the judge's seat, to his crucifixion as the King of the Jews, as the inscription above his head on the cross announces in Hebrew, Latin, and Greek. And from there, his resurrection and appearances to his disciples, including us at this very moment, always with the same message: peace be with you, do not be afraid, take and eat, feed my lambs. God gave him his portion among the great and divided the spoils with the mighty, as Isaiah promised. He shares that portion and those spoils with us. Let's remain faithful to him as he is our Passover lamb, and rise with joy with him on Easter Sunday morning.